All right, welcome to Culture Couch Live. And this week we've got a guest which I'm really excited about. But as I normally do, I'm going to let one of our team introduce our guest. But I'll say hello to Marcus first. But Adam, how are you, Adam? And how are you, Carly? Good to see everyone.
Hi, Rosie.
Hi,
how are
Paul.
you?
Very well.
Excellent, excellent. Well, Adam, over to you without further ado. And we can get you to introduce one of our clients, but one of the guys that you've been working closely with. So maybe introduce our guest, mate. That'd be great.
Thank you, Paul. I've been very lucky to get to know Marcus over the last year. Marcus is what I think is a true leader. He's very dedicated to culture, to performance and sustained performance. So he's one of those clients who you just delight to work with. Marcus is a key part of the leadership team at TMX Global. So I might, rather than express his career in my words, I might ask him to do that. Marcus, hello. Thank you for being here. And would you tell us about your role and how your career got you here?
Yeah, thanks, Adam. And, appreciate you making some time for me on a pretty gloomy day here in Melbourne, but, plenty of things that are happening here. And, look, I think it's been an amazing journey to here. And TMX is, we're a scale business on a global perspective. COVID, was an incredibly interesting period for us as an organization. We took on, private equity ownership. We bought our largest competitor. We had a 300% increase in headcount, all against the backdrop of the largest pandemic we've seen in modern times. So, talk about change management. I think we broke every rule in terms of what we were trying to do. But we came out in one piece. And, I think, when we look at what was important to us, it was a strong foundation of, alignment between the senior leadership team and, a really interesting period. But, I think where we look back on it, like us all, it's a bit of a blur, but, we came out the other end in good shape. And, as a business, we're growing. So, I've been here for 3 years. Most of my working life was in the one organization in Toll. And I had an incredibly, successful period that came to an end at a point in time. And lucky that, Travis Erridge, who's the CEO of TMX, and I had long-standing conversations. And I always thought this was the home for me to come back to, knowing that a lot of my colleagues had come here and, a really natural fit. And, after being in a business for a long period of time, it's quite daunting to move, but, felt as if it was the right place at the right time. And, as they always say, things happen for a reason. So I'm here today.
Outstanding.
Marcus, you talked about, I guess, Toll and then TMX. Give us a bit of an insight into what it is that TMX is known for. I understand you from the outside looking in as being in part of property and supply chain management and really being experts in those fields. But if you can talk a bit about those fields and just what you saw through COVID.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting period. I mean, I think we all felt when we went to the supermarkets and, craziness with, toilet tissue and all the other things that we saw. That was just one part of it. I think that the guts of it was really about, health and well-being of workers, and our clients are all grappling with the same challenges. It's a funny one. We call ourselves corporate refugees. You come here and, having stepped out of heavy corporate for 15 years and come into this, there's a real appreciation of how you have to adapt to come to a business that's very different to, bureaucratic, matrix-led organizations. So there's a sense where you've got to reset. And when I say reset, it's just about understanding the environment that you're in. Very different. The first couple of days, people coming to work with shorts and t-shirt, and a completely different environment. Where come from an environment where if I saw the CEO, I had to wear a suit and tie, and I don't think I've worn a suit and tie since I've been in this place. So it's been a real resetting in terms of that. But we get stuff done. There's a strong operational edge around what we do. We're not about shiny PowerPoint. We're about understanding where we add value. And I think that's the strong part of why I love this place is that the value for money equation for us is very simple. If we're not adding value for money, we're not going to be in the game. So that's just the way we look at things.
It's interesting. I read an article not long ago, Marcus, about sport, and it was more. I've come from a team sport, obviously, but it was more in relation to individual sports. And what it said was that that most elite individual athletes have coaches. And it talked in the context of the lack of coaches for senior executives. And it sort of hit me. I suppose it's one thing we know, but talk to that. Because I mean, one of the things I think is really important about leaders is self-awareness. Now, the great thing about self-awareness is, well, I don't have to know everything and I don't know everything, but how can I get better and better? So talk to that, because I know you and Adam got a great relationship now. What sparked your interest in that self-awareness and getting yourself a coach?
Yeah, I thought about it for a long time before Adam and I, I say joined forces, but probably overstating a little bit. But where there were things that I wanted to discuss with my CEO that I didn't feel completely comfortable with, and I would rather talk about a situation with someone like Adam in a way where we can really unpack it in a way where he will challenge some of my thinking. And I think that's equally important. And I call it just professional hygiene around how do I structure my week. My game day is Friday, so that's my biggest day of the week. That's where I basically build up for my Friday. My Friday is where the most important things happen. So how can I be aware of that? And we speak about that in a way where how does a week look, and then how do we build it up, and then how do we become match fit to hit the end of the week where we get the most outcome from it. So we talk about everything and nothing, but it's the things that I don't have. I've got a funny CEO that we talk on an ad hoc basis, and he's completely accessible to me, but for the most part we talk when we need to talk. So yep. I feel as if the coach mentality for me, and we call it coaches, but it's very much in a mentoring type of way where I'll come to Adam with challenges that I'm facing and ask for a perspective of how does he deal with it, and equally we'll unpack it in a way where, and we talk about a lot of things, and I don't go into the minutiae of it, but it's, yep. Stuff that's quite impactful to my professional sort of makeup. So, I look back on it now, and at the risk of embarrassing Adam, is that I struggle to think how I wouldn't have it, because it's just become a part of my fortnightly cycle where I've got the hour. I prep for it. We talk about it. We recap where we're at, what we're doing, what are we moving forward, and then we move ahead. So yeah, I think for any professional leader, and I think my take on it would be this: that you can't just get someone who's going to tell you what you want to hear, because Adam tells me things that I don't want to hear, and challenges me on things that I think I know that I'm on the right path or I don't. So that's sort of a long answer to a fairly short question, Paul.
That was good.
It's interesting, Marcus, because a lot of obviously at the moment, the big issue that we hear still every workplace we go to is around hybrid workplace. How do we manage it? What does collaboration look like? And the thing that we're hearing a lot is that middle tier management, so the people who are really hard to retain are like the 4 to 6 years of experience. And they're the ones who need to be around other leaders to learn leadership, right? So they don't necessarily get taught leadership, but if they're in the office, they see their leaders, they see the senior leaders, they learn from that. But now in a hybrid world, that's all of the research is saying that's one of the things that companies are having trouble with, is upskilling that middle layer in leadership. And when you talk about coaching, that to me is sort of an option that potentially we could use in that middle management level, even in a group sense, to try and help them, with those leadership skills that are so important.
Yeah, I mean, it's a challenging point around the whole hybrid work environment. And, I'm going through a recruitment phase at the moment. And, one of the key things that everyone asks me, what's your expectations on that? Yeah. I think we're better together. That's my personal view. And I preface that by saying I sound old when I'm saying that, because, I think we're better together from the perspective that we collaborate in a better environment. Pre-COVID, we did a bit of work from home, but it wasn't sort of a lot. So I think, I think particularly when you've got, I think our average workforce, the average age would be 25, 26. So you've got, you've got quite a young workforce, and, that cohort, has an expectation that, you work from wherever. But the way I explain it to people is that, I'm fairly spontaneous in terms of how I work. If I come out of a client meeting and the client says, we want to start tomorrow, the 3 people that generally get to work on that project are the 3 people that are in front of me. So, if you're not in that type of space and you're not aware, I think I've actually probably seen it moving a little bit more recently too, and I think we're going to see that become more pronounced. particularly as we sort of see some of the macroeconomic sort of environment sort of take hold. But I visit customers every day of my life. You know, I'm going to a major multinational after this. They've got a completely hybrid environment, but they've got anchor days now where they peg it in so you can actually do it. To some more private companies where their work from home policies, there's no work from home, and you know we've got offices, and the office is the place you work for. So look, I think it'll level somewhere in between, but you know, I'm a little bit old-fashioned in that I like to have my team around me, and you know, to talk to them and see them, and all the modern communications we've got still doesn't replace face-to-face interaction, no matter what you tell me.
Yeah, absolutely. Talk to us about the pressure too, mate, because I mean, yeah, that's probably, coaching's applicable at all times, but how important, and I'm sure sometimes there's a pressure situation where you can't get hold of Adam. So it's an internal, to me, it's an internal person you can bounce things off, and an external person, because we're all under pressure. And one of the things I wrote down in my leadership audit was, and Adam and Carly have heard this 100 times, is under pressure, don't fly off the handle. You know, if you've got nothing, you know, productive to say, try and calm yourself down. So, I mean, we're all in a pressure environment. Talk to the coaching in that, and the mentoring in that, and also you being a sounding board for people within your organization as well, to sort of say, well, I don't want you to bring that up and just blurt it out. I want you to have a think around what that means and get some real system around that. So talk to the pressure and the coaching in those moments as well.
Yeah, I think, you know, it's funny, you know, that, you know, Travis, I'll talk a bit about Travis, our CEO, is just an enormous leader. But Travis' sort of view is that 8 out of 10's a pass for us. You know, so sometimes you're rocking in the corner thinking the world's going to win, and you forget you've got compound growth rates of 35%. But, you know, we're a private equity owned business, so, you know, it's not for the faint-hearted. So you talk about pressure, Paul. It's, you know, it's a daily pressure in terms of, you know, cycles, conversion, what we're doing, clients, you know, issue resolution, you know, even basic things. You know, we're across 14 countries now, so you're getting dragged to North America, you're getting dragged back into Asia. So, you know, that's all that. I use the philosophy, and Adam and I talk a bit about, you know, how does pressure manifest, and I use it as sometimes it's sometimes the kryptonite that helps you get through it, right? And I think I use that in the way that, you know, everyone's looking for you in high pressure situations. The hardest part that we face in terms of pressure, and I face in pressure, is losing. I mean, failure is the biggest thing, and you talk about that. I mean, anyone can celebrate success. It's how do we celebrate, or how do we deal with adversity in a way, and I find that's the most important form of leadership in terms of what we do. You know, we've been working on a big deal for 6 months and it doesn't go our way. So how do you form the view from the team to actually keep them up and get them back the next day, and keep them, you know, in the right headspace, and make them learn from it. And, you know, I think, you know, I'll never be okay with losing, because I think the minute I'm okay with losing, my use by date's past, and I don't think that day's any day soon, because I still hurt. I still hurt as much when I lose, and, you know, not to kick the cat, but that's okay, because if you want it, you can have it, right? And I think, you know, that's what I instill in the group. But we do a lot of work in terms of that, and high pressure, intensive environments are not for everyone, and particularly through COVID. And I think we've seen a couple of people, you know, put their hand up and say, you know, this is chaos, and, you know, this is the pace and intensity of what you're working at is cutthroat. So yeah, you got to form a view, and I think Adam and I definitely work on tactics and how you deal with pressure in the right way.
Yeah, excellent. It's interesting. I used to love losing. That was fun for me. So yeah, because on Monday it was great to read about on a Monday, Adam. Just, you know, it was really good for me.
The public shaming.
Yeah, the public shaming. Yeah, it's one of the most fun
Susie,
parts.
you know that I'm not very good with jokes. I'm pretty sure you're joking right now.
Yeah, no, exactly. But I was going to say, mate, it is interesting that process always has to be at the forefront, isn't it? So we talk about it, Carly, a lot, don't we? Like, you can't be held captive to winning and losing. You've got to go back to the process and say, well, because there's times, and Adam, you would have seen as well, there's times when ratings are going up and everything's going well, behavior's really bad, you know, or you're selling, and that's the thing if we're so outcome focused, isn't it? So it's breaking down what the process is, rather than, as you said, getting too caught up in the losing. Because if we just break it down to winning and losing, particularly when I was in it, you're either had a great week or a bad week based on the result. Talk to that as well from a team point of view. How important is the process that you have to put in place at your business in order to be successful?
I sat through I travel a fair bit, so it's the time when I can reflect on things. And I was telling Adam, I sat through a great podcast with Christian Horner from Red Bull, and he talks about, sometimes that they were at the risk of accepting talented genius dickheads, excuse my French, but that's they were accepting that. And his view on it was a hole's better than an asshole, because you're better not to have someone in a business than to have someone who you're carrying. I sort of look at it, and I actually encourage.
Hang on. Can we stop right there? I need that quote again. Can we get that quote again, please?
A hole. It's not my quote. I'm actually proud of it. A hole in your team is better than an asshole. That's how his view on it was.
Hang on. Not often I get the pen out of my knees.
But he and in you talk about high pressure environments. That's top of the beer in terms of what you do. And I sort of look why it resonated with me is that I think through a period of time through COVID, we rightly or wrongly, because of just things that we accepted talented D-heads, and I think that was it went against my sort of tenets of what my values and my culture is, my code is about that. And I think I'm really hard on that. And more recently, you have to make hard calls to actually be able to preserve a culture and make a team and make them cohesive. And I think the interesting part is they're all looking at it and everyone knows it, and everyone's saying it to you. When it actually happens, everyone goes, "Yeah, Marcus, that was we all." It's sort of like, I don't know. It's you talk about. I like to think in that way that how do you deal with that? Well, you deal with it in a very clinical way. You not clinical is probably the wrong term, but I think you got to look at it, weigh it up, and I'm always one to be very decisive and to make the call for the right reasons and to have the right level of empathy and to with the business front of mind.
So Adam, I'm going to ask you a question, mate. So I don't want to embarrass Marcus, but you made the point before, and we've got a lot of clients, but we try and bring on clients that obviously walk the walk, which is really difficult, isn't it? Because in any environment, what impresses you most about Marcus as a leader?
I think it starts with values. So Marcus, I know, will say very little on his own behalf, so allow me to do it for him. He's extremely high in empathy.
Yeah, right.
He's extremely driven, and he's very, very capable.
Yeah.
And so you can look back at his career and say that, so you look at someone who you describe leadership attributes to, and Marcus fits those. I think that the thing that struck me the most beyond those is his openness to keep learning, his real drive to keep evolving, and to listen to outside input. You can't coach someone who doesn't want to be coached.
Yeah.
You can't make anyone do anything.
Yeah.
You can hopefully just point out some elements that perhaps aren't as immediately visible and how they might be considered. So you get to work with someone like that, and it is really ideal. You can actually cover a hell of a lot of ground quickly, which has been my experience with Marcus. And you've heard him talk about the growth of the company, 35% growth rates. It's not every business that does that. I mean, that is a huge, just a normal tempo to get to. So for me, it's Marcus's ability to keep evolving on top of that, like his thirst to do more and more. So Marcus, perhaps I can ask you, how do you keep, that spirit that you have internally evolving with your team at work? How do you keep the business growing with that sort of tempo behind you?
I mean, I think it's sometimes you're in it, you forget it. I think that's the way I look at it. And sometimes you just think it's, organized chaos that you do that, and come from a business where we had CAGR of 4 to 5 points every year. And, I think we were, high-fiving every year, and you come into this and you go, it's very different. And I think it always comes back to me as a strong philosophy around recruiting on culture. The rest, I reckon I can teach anyone. And I think that's one of the failures I've had, is that I've gone after people who I thought were really good at what they did, but they just didn't fit the culture of what we did, and they failed immeasurably because they came in and they just were jarring. And I think that's so. I'm mindful of just keeping pulse checks on people, and I think that's, for me, has been what I do when I observe and I spend time with the group. And equally, as a leader of the function that I work in, is that I'm not afraid to get back on the tools and do a job where I do it. And I think that's the art of what we do. I think any culture I've come from, I mean, I was never one that was strong on culture from a younger age in my professional life. I sort of didn't even value it. Yeah. Came into a business where, I had a leader by the name of Chris Pierce at Toll, and the first thing he stood up at a conference and said, "These are our values. If you don't agree with them, you can leave now, right?" And I was sort of like, whoa, that's sort of happening. And he said, no, he said it in a really empathetic way, and it stood to me forever. He said, "I've got a really extensive network. I'll help you get a new job, but it just can't be here." And I was like, well, that's really, and that was the start of my journey into it. And I sort of, the way I look at culture is it's a bit of a patchwork of everyone that I've worked with, rightly or wrongly, stuff that didn't work for me, and to be able to craft it in a way where I've actually works for me. But, little things like that, just getting back and, doing a pitch with a team, or, grabbing someone that's junior, or if I go to Asia, letting these younger people sit in on conversations with clients. I mean, I think when I'm finished with this, I never want to be known as the heavy-handed sort of exec. I want to have empathy. I want to coach and mentor the younger group. And, I think it's one of the beauties of being in a flatter organizational structure. You don't have the hierarchy. So you have the opportunity to work with the most junior person. You have the opportunity to work with the most senior person. You have all these different sort of opportunities. It's just how do you harness them in the right way.
Carly, I'm going to give you the final question. Isn't it? I shouldn't say I'm surprising, but the language when we get people on that get it, it's so consistent. I feel like offering Marcus a job now, going, mate, come and work for us. But talk to that. It is, isn't it? It's a consistency around the language when you hear people talk. Yeah. You can tell that they get it, can't you?
Yeah, and it's really interesting because what we're seeing is that culture is now a much more accepted area that drives performance, drives bottom line growth, drives profit, drives 35% year-on-year turnover. But the people who understand that, you're right. They absolutely talk a different language in terms of, the values and the belonging and the conversation and the inclusivity. But my last question to you, Marcus, is what do you think the most important thing you do that drives culture is within your organisation?
Yeah, it's a question that sort of doesn't get posed a lot, but I think for me it's really about living the values of what a culture is. It's not just something that's on a wall, and too often I see values splashed around a wall and they don't mean anything to me. Like I saw a great one in a client the other day when I was going to the bathroom, and it says, "We don't accept prima donnas," and I was like, that's really interesting, right? And that was just a value. But I think what I look at it is that making sure that there's a value set and code that reflects what's important to what we do, and the alignment on that needs to be laser focused in terms of anyone who wants to participate and be compensated as part of the business. So I think it's an evolution, I think, in culture. I don't think it stands still for 1 second. I think you look at it and you consistently need to adapt. If you look at what our culture was pre-COVID and post-COVID, it's two different things. I think that's just the way you got to look at it. And I think every senior leader, and I think some people walk culture and some people talk culture. I think, the best cultures are the ones you don't talk about, but you just don't accept. And, the most junior person can pull someone up, whether that be the CEO, because they're just not living the values. So I think defines a business. It's intrinsically linked to profitability, I reckon, too, if you get it right. Yeah. So, there's all the things that we grapple with.
Mate, great, outstanding finish, walking it.
I love that answer, yeah.
Yeah, I love the answer. It's a great answer, mate. Look, we really, really appreciate you coming on, Marcus, and awesome. A great conversation, Adam. Thanks for inviting Marcus along. Thanks, Carly. Now, you're heading out to one of my old sponsors too. I won't mention their name. So it's size 11.5. Just mention my name. Just a couple of pairs of shoes.
They don't have your address in Hawaii, Reezy. They're still going to go to
don't worry. They know where I am. I put them on the map. Don't worry about that. I put them on the map years ago.
All good.
But sincerely, say hello to the crew out there. I won't mention the name. This is not an advertisement on the Culture Live, but pair of
Yeah,
shoes.
and appreciate you having me, guys. Good chat. Really good to have a chat, and always easy talking. And I think these are topical conversations that everyone's wrestling with. So appreciate you giving me some time.
Thanks,
thanks, mate. That was
great.
awesome. Great message. Really spot on. Really enjoyed the conversation. So thanks, Adam. Mate, fantastic.
Thank you,
mate.
Paul. Thank you, Marcus.
And thanks, Carly. We'll see you. We'll see everyone next week on the Culture Couch Live.